Welcome to another Coffee with Samso, where we bring you stories about the ASX and companies who are near listing on the ASX. Today here we're at the UWA Club in Crawley, and I've got Brad Underwood here from Galileo Mining, who'll be giving us sort of an update of what's been happening on the nickel and palladium projects. Brad, well, welcome back. And,
Thanks, Noel.
Yeah, fire away.
Well, we have been busy since we last spoke. I believe we were going into some drilling in the Fraser Range when we spoke last. So we're an exploration company. We run a number of programs through the year. We've done our first program. We haven't yet made that big discovery. So it was a little bit disappointing. We're very optimistic people, but we also recognise we are in a difficult business. So we've done a number of drill holes. We've confirmed that we've got prospective ground in the Fraser Range. We're getting ready for our next program coming up next month, and we've got some new results from Norseman as well.
I mean, look, we talked. I mean, you've come on to Coffee Samso a few times already. Exploration is about vectoring into a source. I noticed that in the recent announcements since we last spoke, you guys have been sort of working hard away at generating targets. Can you give us an idea or a description of how these things come about?
Sure. So in the area of geology, within professional geology, there's a number of different specializations. So there's mine geology, and within mine geology, there's open pit geology, underground geology, there's database geology, and there's exploration geology. So within the field of exploration geology, we've got field geologists, we've got people that do models, and then we've got target generation geologists. So within that very niche field of target generation geology, that's where we fit in. So that's our area of expertise. That's what we've done in the past. That's what we've been successful at. It is a particularly difficult area to be successful at. And there are a number of techniques which increase our chances of finding something. So you mentioned before vectoring in towards a target. So using all the data we've got, layering that data and visualizing it, and then putting it into a ranking sequence so that we come up with the best targets for drilling. We start with geophysics because we can cover large areas of ground very quickly with geophysics, and in particular with nickel exploration, we use a combination of magnetics, gravity, and electromagnetics. Then we go into our chemical targeting side, which would be through drilling, and if it's appropriate, through sampling from surface.
Most of the vectoring that's done with nickel, obviously, unless it's sort of outcropping and you're doing your soil samples, is geophysics, right? So as you mentioned before, and in your announcement notice, I always tell people geophysics is great to look at because it's always colourful pictures, right?
That's right, big red dots.
Big red dots,
yeah.
And can you share with us how you guys actually create those targets and spare the high terminologies because we're simple folks here. But can you just share with us how you guys actually vector or create those vector in relation, say, the ones that announced that you've put an announcement out?
Yeah, probably one of the most important and sometimes underrated techniques is just magnetics. So the Earth is magnetic. We've got magnetic fields in north and south, but as well as that, the rocks themselves are magnetic. So we've got the Earth's magnetic field, and then we've got the magnetic field of the individual rocks. So it means that when we fly over with a plane, collect the magnetic data, we can remove the effects of the global magnetic Earth, and then just look at the magnetic effects of the rocks that we are targeting. And then each rock has a different magnetization. I hope I'm not going into too much detail. No. But that's the key technique for telling us what type of rock we have in the ground. And that's good for around the first 400 meters and often deeper as well. But the dominant response in the magnetics that we look at is from the first 400 meters, and that's perfect for what we are targeting as a first pass exploration.
So it's the minerals in the rocks, right?
Yes, the minerals in the rocks, and rocks are classified by the groups of minerals that occur within them. So if we've got more magnetite, then that gives us an indication of what sort of rocks we're dealing with. Yeah, so you're right, it's the minerals within the rocks, dominantly magnetite and pyrrhotite.
So if you're chasing nickel like you guys are, and is there a specific mineral that you guys are expecting the signatures to come from?
There is. With the magnetics, that'll give us the overview of the type of rocks. If we're very lucky, we'll get a magnetic response from the peritite itself. But in general, the magnetics gives us the pattern of the rocks and how they're distributed through the Earth. So when we understand what sort of rock units we're dealing with, then we can use our next techniques, such as gravity and electromagnetics, to really hone in on those targets. So that's why magnetics is really fundamental to exploration, because it's the first pass approach to the prospectivity of a region, and then we go to our more advanced targeting techniques. In particular, electromagnetics is a direct targeting technique looking for drill positions, and gravity will be a supporting technique as well.
How do those two, because we hear this all the time and we see an announcement, but the understanding of how does the gravity help and how does the electromagnetic help to support your, this is a bunch of rocks that's magnetic.
Yeah.
How do you zoom in? How do you vector that?
Well, once we've got our magnetic patterns and we're formulating an idea of the type of rocks we have on the ground, then we can go back and focus on those target areas using gravity. So we've got an example here from Nova. In fact, that's a rock of high-grade nickel copper sulfide. And if you feel that, you'll notice it's quite heavy.
Yep.
And gravity is a way of measuring the relative density of rocks within the Earth. So where we come across a heavy rock, such as one example would be nickel copper sulfides,
Yep.
There are other examples as well, then it gives us another indicator that we might have found a sulfide occurrence. Of course, there are other rocks that give gravity responses as well, but in combination, so if we have an EM response on the same location, so that's very conductive as well, then we start to build up a number of layers of data that support the concept that it could be related to sulfide, and in particular sulfide with nickel and copper.
Okay. So I guess that's how you sort of eliminate one from the other and creating a bigger picture in that sense.
That's right. So if we have a magnetic target and we follow it up and we end up with a magnetic, a gravity, an electromagnetic target plus a little bit of drilling in the area, that's a first-class target.
Yep.
If we have magnetic data but no gravity response and let's say a subtle EM response, that's also a target but a lower order target. So that's how we rank things. If we have good quality data sets and each of those indicates an anomaly, then that's the best type of target. Where we have a partial target, we might have, say, a good magnetic anomaly, a little bit of EM, but no drilling to support it or no other indicators, then that's something we'd drill as a lower priority.
Okay. In regards to your announcements on your new targets, obviously you guys are heading off to test it out. And how do you rate that in terms of, not say rate of success, but rate of clarity of the target?
It's a good one for us because we've got a lot of support from the work we've done. So we have completed air core drilling in the area, which is a shallow technique, just looking beneath the cover. We already know we have cumulate rocks, which is the deep intrusive rocks which have the potential to host nickel and copper. So we've got the right rock types. That's a big start. The magnetic pattern tells us we are within the right units of the Fraser Range to host the mineralisation. We've got an EM target, which in particular is a very strong EM target and has a large scale to it. Then we've got our competitors drilling along strike and in a couple of areas. They've also hit some very prospective rocks. Mm-hmm. So what it's telling us is that we are likely to drill a magmatic sulfide system, which is a big start, and that the magmatic sulfide system that we'll hit is likely to be quite large because of the scale of the targets, and then we have to check for nickel and copper. So it's they're particularly good targets. It's the scale which is really quite encouraging for us, because it's saying that if we do have nickel and copper, then there's a good chance this is going to be quite a large occurrence of mineralisation.
Okay. I've sort of never worked in the nickel industry, but my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, is that normally these bodies tend to be small relative to other commodities. Is that a fair comment?
With the magmatic nickel sulfide deposits, a genuinely world-class deposit would be over 30 million tonnes, and the giants are around 100 million tonnes. Anything over 10 million tonnes is still a very large mine. If you're mining at, say, 1 million tonnes a year or more, that's still an 8 to 10 year mine life. So they are
Small in size, not in value.
They're bigger than komatiite nickel deposits.
Okay.
So it's the komatiite nickel, which are relatively small and high grade.
Yeah.
Magmatic nickel is much larger, and the giants are much larger.
Okay. In your announcement recently, I think you're referring to your neighbours having previous drilling, because I can see where you guys have got your targets there. When we look at the target, and when you guys say there's a plate, because that's what you guys talked about, right? And I had a similar conversation with Scott Williamson from Blakestone. I said, you guys use the term trains all the time, and a lot of people actually don't understand what you mean by trains. When you say a plate, right? Are we talking about you have a firm understanding of approximate dimensions, or is this that's approximately that area we should put our drill hole in? Because knowing a drill hole is relatively small on a big body, do you have this thing could be that width, that dimension size?
It's called a plate because of the technical parameters of modelling, which is a little bit confusing, but when you model an EM response, it's a plate because there's no thickness to it. It's the thickness is a conductivity per metre unit, which can be a combination of, it is a combination of metres and conductivity. So the plate could be infinitesimally thin and extremely conductive, or very, very wide and low conductivity. So it's called a plate because really it's three-dimensional, but the thickness is unknown, other than it's been given a parameter of conductivity per metre. So a better term might just be a model. And the best parts of the model are usually very accurate. So where the centre of the model tells us that we have the peak conductivity, that's almost always where you'll get an EM, a conductive response when you put a drill hole in the ground. So the model attempts to replicate the total response, and the best parts of the model is the centre, where the highest point of the conductivity has been modelled. So that's why when we start drilling, we go for that centre point, and then we work our way out to the edges to determine how large it is and where it's going.
Okay. And I guess I'm assuming that the centre, the highest response, may not necessarily be the sweet spot. It just happens to be that signature then.
That's right. So we don't know if there's nickel or copper with the conductor, and the highest point of conductivity is in fact related to the pyrrhotite. So usually related to the pyrrhotite. So that's why when we start drilling, we start in the centre, identify what's causing the conductive anomaly, and then we'll use diamond drilling, so it gives us the ability to look at the structure and which way it's travelling through the earth. And then we try and define those points where there might be higher grades of nickel and copper.
I guess in some ways the first prize for you guys is that you're in the source rock, and then the bonus would be if it kicks with big numbers.
That's right, yeah.
Obviously you want that as well, but I guess if you're in the source rock, at least you know that you're in the game in that sense.
Yeah, that's right. We've got a chance of finding nickel and copper when we're in that magmatic sulfide system. So it's similar. At the previous drilling we've done, we knew we had a magmatic sulfide system. We had a lot of good indicators there. Unfortunately, we didn't have the grade to give us a genuine discovery, but we have a lot of good indicators showing the prospectivity of the area, and we are still working that area as well, along strike, doing more EM surveying. So as well as with our drilling coming up next month, we've got a lot of other target generation work going on, building up more targets. We know we've got prospective ground. It's a good thing to have, and we'll just keep working it.
Look, from the very beginning when we first had the conversation, I've always felt that there's what you guys have and the way you guys are going out, it's just a matter of time. And a lot of people forget that vectoring mineral exploration is not a one drilling program game. It's a series of drilling programs in most times, right? Not it doesn't happen first go. But we're going forward. One of your announcements recently was talking about your new project in Norseman. We've touched on that before, right? And that's the one that you're chasing palladium. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah.
Can you share with us what the thinking and the history with that?
So before we were Galileo, we were a private company owned by our major shareholder, Mark Creasy, and the company was actually called PlatX, and it was platinum exploration. So we've got a history of platinum exploration around Norseman, and in doing that platinum exploration, this is going back 10 years, the cobalt laterite was discovered and drilled out. And with the cobalt boom a few years ago, we listed the company, and then we've gone on to do exploration of Fraser Range as well as Norseman too. So what we've done is we've reviewed all of the drilling we have, and we've reinterpreted the occurrence of what's called platinum group metals, which includes platinum and palladium, and we've begun to understand where the PGEs or PGMs are coming from, and in particular how they're related to the sulfides that we see in the area. So we've now noticed that we have some coherent structures where there are numerous zones of anomalous palladium mineralization, and that palladium is associated with increased copper as well. Okay. So it's a really good example of reviewing data to generate new understandings in the geology. So previously it had been platinum exploration around in geological terms, the ultramafic rock, but now we understand that the palladium is in fact occurring around a structure on the margin of the ultramafic with the mafic rock, and it's never been drill tested. It's over 10 kilometres of strike at the Mission Sill, and then a similar type of geology at Mount Thirsty where we have 5 kilometres of strike and some significant results which have never been drill tested or followed up.
Okay, that must be sort of exciting for you guys to have that, because palladium is sort of the flavour going for the last 6 months, right? We've had a lot of activity in that space, and you know, like all exploration, as you said, right? It's understanding the geology and what the geology is doing, and that hence, you know, just because you've got one commodity doesn't mean that's not that what you think that is the major commodity doesn't mean that there's one that actually is bigger.
That's right. I think the best example is some of the old gold mines here in Western Australia that were revisited for the lithium potential, and then they've just got a lithium mine sitting there, which has been an amazing story for some companies.
Yeah, well, the classic one is the Mount Holland goldfields, which turned into one of the biggest lithium project at that time.
That's right. World, so they started off as literally as a gold mine.
Yeah. And it was gold mine for decades. I think. Series of gold pits, everything. Yeah. But that's an interesting history for that. But in going forward, I guess in for Galileo, what's in there for investors?
Well, for us, we've got the nickel sulfide exploration at the Fraser Range and the drilling we've got coming up next month. Those are particularly well-developed targets. And we've also got the pipeline of prospects with the Norseman palladium that we've been discussing. And my understanding and feeling is that the demand for palladium is going to either increase or stay the same. Most likely it'll increase because of its use as a catalytic converter, and it's classified as a green metal. So for us, our company strategy has been on nickel, copper and cobalt, looking at that electric vehicle demand and in particular the batteries that drive those. So adding in palladium is continuing with that theme for us. So we're very much focused on those metals which will be of value in the future, and looking to make a discovery for any of those commodities with the targets that we have.
So what's your cash position at this point in time?
At the end of the last quarter it was 6.1 million.
Okay.
And we usually spend between 800,000 and $1 million a quarter, so we are well funded.
Yep. And the market's still hot for nickel and palladium.
That's good projects are getting a lot of recognition.
Yeah.
And I really think that palladium demand is going to continue. So it's great that we have a well-developed palladium prospect that's ready for drilling, and we'll be doing a number of rounds of drilling there coming up over the remainder of the year. We've got the shallow air core drilling, looking at the structures and building up the understanding of the area. But the best drilling, of course, is the deeper RC and diamond drilling we've got planned with the targets that we have ready to go.
Okay. And, as the man sitting in the big chair for Galileo, you would speak to a lot of sort of, I call them the money men and the ones who are out in the market. How are they telling you that this sort of mineral commodity run's going to go? Are they talking it's short-term, long-term? What are they saying?
Most commentary I'm hearing from people that have been in the business for a long time is suggesting that the demand is here to stay for a while. There's a lot of stimulus spending going on. There's demand coming from developing countries, and I think that the prices we are seeing, even though they are high, they ought to be quite sustainable over the medium term.
Yeah, I think I tend to agree. I can see, being in the industry for nearly 30 years, or probably 30 years now, I don't think I've seen as good fundamentals behind this commodity boom for geologists ever, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'd have to go back a long time to see another boom of this magnitude, and I think it's just beginning.
Yeah, I believe so too. I think they've had a rest, a little bit of hiatus a couple of months ago, and I think it's and slow steady growth is fantastic for us. We don't want to see any spikes, I think. But look, in terms of what Galileo is doing, it's obviously in that, as you said, sort of the EV friendly green metals. Do you foresee you guys doing any sort of big corporate activities going forward? Are you guys just going to be completely flat out just servicing what you have?
Our specialty is target generation within exploration, I mentioned at the start, so that's really our focus, is making discoveries. We've got good ground, so I think we'll continue to work that ground until we've made a discovery, and hopefully it's sooner rather than later.
Yep. All right, Brett, thank you. Again, it's always good. I love an exploration story, but I think what you've done for us today, just talking about how you guys vectoring this, I think that's a big plus for us, because a lot of viewers out there, the feedback is that they're enjoying the learning from you guys, because you guys are the experts in the game, I guess. But Brad, thank you for coming, and well, let's hope we continue the journey, and looking forward to your drilling results.
Great, thanks for the coffee.
All right.